The question that I get asked the most about this book is, how did I get started on this? And it is kind of an interesting story because I had finished the boys' book, and I knew that if I was going to write another book, that it shouldn't be another issue book, because people love issue books, but they don't actually buy that many issue books. So I wanted to write one with a narrative, a reason to turn the page, and so my wife Robin and I were out biking in the Shenandoah Valley one day, and I was daydreaming and falling behind her by about 50 yards. And all of a sudden I realized, I know somebody who could carry a whole book with a narrative. And of course that's how I ended up asking Michelle for to cooperate in some way for the book. And that's a process that took, about 2 months. And but she eventually she gave me some access here, enough obviously to do the book, which was great, and it was great working with her. Everyone also asks me what's my favorite, Michelle story, if you will. And the preface leads off with a Michelle story about going to the tailor, so I won't go into that one. But there's another one I love that's buried in there that you might miss. When the daughters were much younger, Kevin and Michelle, living in Toledo, went to the original Pancake House for a special meal, and there's always a big line there. And sure enough, there was a line there this time. Is this creating the echo? And so they're standing in this line. The problem is there were open tables, and there was staff milling around. So as Kevin tells the story, Michelle checks it out, and she walks up behind the maitre d' desk, and then back, and then she looks around the restaurant, and then finally she just walks behind the maitre d' desk and says, "Okay, you know, top for two, over here." And then she's like dispatched the whole thing, And like, it's the funniest thing that Kevin said is like the staff at the restaurant were like grateful that somebody like knew what they were doing. So that's my sort of favorite Michelle story. And I'm going to wrap up because I know Q&A is far more interesting than listening to me. So, the significance of the book is that my gut instinct in starting the book was that Michelle would be tackling the core issues that we're going to be seeing playing out in states and school districts in the coming years. And, I'd like to say it was some genius on my part. It was probably accidental, but in fact, that is happening. If you look at the teacher's contract just agreed to in Wisconsin, you look at Colorado, Florida, New Jersey, Nevada, New York, in all those places, if you look at the reforms that are proposed or just starting, the place to actually see how they played out on the ground would be Washington, D.C. Of course, some politicians will look at what happened here and say, why would we do that? The mayor lost his job and Michelle lost her job. And to those who would say that, I would say, you've got a good point there. So why would anyone do that? A couple of reasons. There's a whole group of politicians who believe that, something that I've dubbed Michelle Light is possible, where, you can do the same kind of reforms, only you smile more when you're doing them, and you're more collaborative. Are they right? I think it depends on the school district. A mid-functioning school district probably could do that. But unfortunately, there are a lot of school districts, too many school districts with the same profile as DC, and I don't think you can get away with it. There's another way of answering this question, because I recall asking this of Kevin Johnson. I thought, here's a politician who's also immersed in education issues and also went door to door campaigning for Fenty. And I asked Kevin, I said, speaking as a mayor, why would anybody reach out for a Michelle Rhee kind of person, considering what happened? And he said, people like us, we're just so desperate to, make a dent, some kind of improvement in urban school districts. And so it is going to happen. They are going to start reaching out, and he offered as proof this avalanche of offers that came to Michelle after she stepped down. So I think Kevin's right. These reforms are going to be tried again and again, and not just the Michelle Light versions. So now I'm going to pass it to Michelle, who amazed me by agreeing to talk about her relations with the press, probably her least favorite topic. But considering this is organized by Education Writers Association, she played along as a good sport. So turn it over to you.
My relations with the press. I think my relationship with the press was complicated. Let me say on the first side that a lot of very good things happened because of the press attention that we got with the efforts that we were putting forth. I was really surprised, to tell you the truth, when I started the job, that there was so much interest in what we were doing. And at first, I would often go out to dinner with Kaya and Richard and Sean, and we'd sort of talk about how strange it was. And at first I really thought it was because the visual was so stark, right? Here's this Korean American woman who is young, who has never run a school, much less a school district, and now she's taken on, this job in a mostly African American city, and it was just such a stark visual. I thought that was what was sort of driving the interest in the news, and I thought that it would dissipate over time. And try as we might, it did not happen. And it just seemed like the press interest and the intensity actually increased over time. And I remember having dinner one night with a journalist here in the city, and I sort of was lamenting. We had a particularly challenging press day that day, and I said, I don't get it. I mean, if there's a fight in the cafeteria at some high school in New York City, I can guarantee you that the New York Times is not covering that. But what's going on? The Washington Post is covering every single thing that's happening, and I don't get it. And he looked at me and he said, I can tell you why there's so much interest. He said, it's because you give good quote. He said, you say the things that we know people are probably thinking in their heads, but they're trained to do better, right, to stick to their talking points, and you actually say those things. You say that there are some teachers who are not so good and need to be removed, and so that's why the press loves you, because you will say those things. So I thought that was interesting. I will say this, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I'm going to say it. As per usual. I think that there were people in the media who were extraordinarily helpful to us in this effort. And I honestly don't think that we could have done the work that we did without some of the media actually backing us 100% of the way. And when things kind of spiraled out of control with what people were thinking and what the blogs were saying, it was sort of the voice of reason. And I couldn't trade that or wouldn't trade that for anything, because it was a venue through which sort of there was this constant and consistent voice saying, this is the right thing. Sometimes they said it was the wrong thing, but mostly they said it was right. That was extraordinarily helpful to the effort. I also, though, will tell you that we made a ton of mistakes when it came to the media. It's funny because starting from very early on in my tenure, people would make comments to either me or my staff saying, you guys have the best PR machine ever. I mean, you're getting on, you're getting covered by all of these major national news outlets. I mean, there's this mastermind behind it, and little did they know it was just a bunch of 24-year-olds running around. We'd have no idea what we were doing. We didn't really have a press shop per se, and somehow people thought it was, the Rhee PR press machine. No, it was the lack thereof, actually. And we I think, naively thought we're going to put our heads down, we're going to work hard, we're going to do the right thing, and then we're going to produce results. And that is really what matters, just making sure that we are focused on the right things and we're producing results. And I think that we very much underestimated the power that the media would have in shaping the message. And so what we ended up with was a situation where the teachers were sort of they were getting messages and they were reading things, in the newspaper or on the blogs, and they were getting the sort of message and the communication shaped in their head. And this is our fault on this. We did not do our part to sort of send a different message proactively. And so we thought, oh, some of those things that people are saying, they're nuts. Nobody's going to believe that. But in the absence of us putting anything different out, it actually stuck in people's heads and it sort of became the narrative. And that's where we really fell down in all of this.